मुंबई प्रेस क्लब आणि लोक अधिकार या दोन संस्थांच्या वतीने आपण इथे आयोजित केलेला कार्यक्रम थोड्याच वेळात सुरू होत आहे. अनेकांची निराशा झालेली असणं शक्य आहे की या कार्यक्रमाच्या निमंत्रण पत्रिकेत मुख्यमंत्री देवेंद्र फडणवीस असं नाव छापलेलं होतं, पण काहीतरी भाजपच्याच भाषेत सांगायचं तर जुमला झाला आणि देवेंद्र फडणवीस इथे उपस्थित राहू शकलेले नाहीत. खरं म्हणजे ते राहिले असते तर फार चांगलं झालं असतं, कारण हा राईट टू सर्व्हिसेस ऍक्ट ही त्यांच्या डोक्यातली कल्पना होती आणि त्यांनी चीफ मिनिस्टर म्हणून शपथ घेतल्यानंतर पहिली जी घोषणा केली त्याच्यात ते राईट टू सर्व्हिसेस ऍक्ट आणू असं त्यांनी सांगितलं होतं. प्रत्यक्षात ते इथे उपस्थित राहिलेले नाहीत, पण ते उपस्थित राहिले नसले तरी इथल्या चर्चेचा सारांश आणि विशेषतः लोक अधिकारचे ऍक्टिव्हिस्ट आणि जर्नलिस्ट यांच्या मनात जे काय आहे या कायद्याविषयी ज्या काय भावना आहेत, क्वेरीज आहेत, जे काही क्वेश्चन्स रेज झालेले आहेत, कारण ड्राफ्ट त्याचा त्यांनी वेबसाईटवर टाकलेला आहे, त्यामुळे व्हॉट चीफ मिनिस्टर वॉन्ट्स टू डू इज ऑलरेडी इन पब्लिक. तर त्या सगळ्या भावना त्यांच्यापर्यंत पोहोचतील आणि त्यामुळे हा कार्यक्रम आपण आता मुख्यमंत्र्यांच्या अनुपस्थित सुरू करत आहोत. खरं म्हणजे गुड गव्हर्नन्स आणि ज्याला भाजपचाच शब्द आहे सुशासन, त्याच्यासाठी हा कायदा अत्यंत आवश्यक आहे आणि त्या सुशासनाचं त्यांनी पालन गेल्या 8 महिन्यात दिल्लीत न केल्यामुळे काय झालं ते आपण काल पाहिलेलं आहे. म्हणजे ते न येण्याशी त्याचा काही संबंध असेल असं मला वाटत नाही, कारण त्यांची नाशिकला काहीतरी पोलीस परेड आणि मुख्य म्हणजे नाशिकला पुढच्या 4 महिन्यात सिंहस्थ कुंभ आहे, त्याच्यासाठी ते तिथे आहेत आणि ते अर्थातच त्यांना कुंभ हा पब्लिक इंटरेस्टचा आणि भाजपच्या विशेष इंटरेस्टचा विषय असल्यामुळे ते तिथे अडकलेले आहेत. आपल्यासोबत या चर्चेमध्ये सहभागी होणार आहेत प्रख्यात RTI ऍक्टिव्हिस्ट आणि माजी इन्फॉर्मेशन कमिशनर शैलेश गांधी. त्यापैकी कोणाची इथे ओळख करून द्यावी लागेल असं मला वाटत नाही. मी शैलेशजींना स्टेजवर यायचं आमंत्रण देतो. त्यांच्यासोबत आहेत संजय उबाले. संजय उबाले हे यांची पण खरं म्हणजे ओळख करून द्यायला नको, कारण ते बरेच वर्ष सनदी अधिकारी होते आणि मुख्य म्हणजे त्यांच्यावर आता डबल रोल निभवायची भूमिका आलेली आहे, कारण गव्हर्नमेंटचा एकही माणूस तिथे नसल्यामुळे. आणि हा फडणवीस यांच्या डोक्यातला कायदा प्रत्यक्षात येण्याच्या आधी, त्यांच्या डोक्याला कायदा येण्याच्या आधी आपल्यापैकी अनेकांना माहितीच असेल की 2006 साली म्हणजे राईट टू इन्फॉर्मेशन ऍक्ट 2005 ला आला. त्याच्यानंतर वर्षभरातच जो कायदा आला त्यावेळेला उबालेजी सर्व्हिसमध्ये होते. आणि आणखीन एक मी आमंत्रित करतो सर्वांना, त्यांची अजिबातच ओळख करून देत नाही मी, कारण ती वेगवेगळ्या प्रकारची ओळख असू शकते. गर्सन दा कुन्हा. मी 2 वाक्य बोलतो फक्त आणि त्याच्यानंतर मी त्या तिघांकडे अख्खा स्टेज आणि माईक हे सर्व देऊन टाकेन. राईट टू इन्फॉर्मेशन ऍक्ट आल्यानंतर 2006 साली जो कायदा आला त्याचं भयंकर मोठं प्रचंड नाव होतं गव्हर्नमेंट सर्वंट्स रेग्युलेशन ऑफ ट्रान्सफर्स अँड प्रिव्हेन्शन ऑफ डिले इन डिस्चार्ज ऑफ ऑफिशियल ड्युटीज ऍक्ट. इतकं मोठं नाव या कायद्याचं होतं. बहुधा त्यामुळेच तो कायदा आहे हेच कोणाच्या लक्षात राहिलं नाही आणि अनेक लोकांच्या हक्कासाठी सिटिझन्स चार्टर यावी म्हणून प्रयत्न करणारे जे ऍक्टिव्हिस्ट आहेत त्यांचं म्हणणं असं होतं की हा UPA सरकारने, UPA नव्हे महाराष्ट्रातल्या काँग्रेस आघाडी सरकारने कायदा केला पण त्यांनी तो करतानाच तो मारून टाकला. त्याच्यावरचा दुसरा आक्षेप असा होता की हा फक्त बाबू लोक म्हणजे जे ब्युरोक्रॅट्स आहेत त्यांच्या फायद्यासाठी ठेवलेला आहे आणि लोकांना जे अधिकार मिळाला पाहिजेत, आपण जे लोक अधिकार म्हणतो, ते नागरिकांना, सिव्हिल सोसायटीला काहीच राईट्स मिळाले नाही आणि हा कायदा फक्त टू डिफेंड द ब्युरोक्रॅट्स याच्यासाठी करण्यात आला अशी पण एक तक्रार होती. पण आता फडणवीस यांनी मुख्यमंत्री म्हणून सूत्र घेतल्यानंतर तातडीने हा विषय पुन्हा ऐरणीवर आणला. खरं म्हणजे आपल्या सगळ्यांचा रोजच्या रोज सरकारशी, ऍडमिनिस्ट्रेशनशी गव्हर्नमेंटशी वेगवेगळ्या कारणाने संबंध येत असतो आणि सर्वांना माहिती आहे की आपल्याला कशा प्रकारची उत्तरं ही सरकारी अधिकाऱ्यांकडून मिळतात जेव्हा आपण कार्यालयात जातो वेगवेगळ्या कामांसाठी. तेव्हा म्हणजे मला स्वतःला, मी जर्नलिस्ट असून अजून आधार कार्ड काढता आलेलं नाही, कदाचित मी जर्नलिस्ट असल्यामुळेच काढता आलेलं नसेल, तर ते जाऊ द्या. पण त्याच वेळेला जे चांगले काम करणारे ब्युरोक्रॅट्स असतात त्या ब्युरोक्रॅट्सना पण पॉलिटिशियन्स कशा रीतीने वापरून घेतात किंवा आपल्याला हवं तसं वागायला लावतात, अशा दोन्ही साईड्स त्या कायद्यामध्ये आहेत. म्हणजे एकाच वेळेला त्या गव्हर्नमेंट ब्युरोक्रेसीनी लोकांसाठी काम केलं पाहिजे आणि लोकांसाठी काम करत असताना पॉलिटिशियन्सनी पण त्यांचा गैरवापर म्हणजे ब्युरोक्रेसीचा मिसयूज करता कामा नये, असे सर्व प्रकारचे क्लॉज हे त्या कायद्यांमध्ये असायला पाहिजेत. आत्ता जो नवीन कायदा आणला त्याच्यात काय आहे ते आपल्याला हे लोक सांगतील. कायदा झालेला नाही अजून, आत्ताचे त्याचा ड्राफ्ट फक्त रिलीज झालेला आहे आणि त्याच्यासाठी सजेशन्स सरकारने मागवलेले आहेत. जो पूर्वीचा कायदा होता 2006चा, ज्याचं भयंकर मोठं नाव मी आता वाचून दाखवलं, त्याच्यामध्ये 2 मेन क्लॉजेस होते की कोणतीही फाईल ब्युरोक्रॅटच्या टेबलवर 7 दिवसापेक्षा जास्त काळ पेंडिंग राहता कामा नये. आणि दुसरी गोष्ट म्हणजे ती फाईल जर त्याला दुसऱ्या डिपार्टमेंटला दुसऱ्या कोणाच्या मंजुरीसाठी पाठवायची गरज नसेल तर ती 45 दिवसामध्ये त्यांनी त्याच्याबाबतचा काय जो बरा वाईट भला बुरा डिसिजन असेल तो त्याला घ्यायला पाहिजे. म्हणजे याचा अर्थ असा की कोणत्याही ब्युरोक्रॅटकडे, कोणत्याही गव्हर्नमेंट ऑफिशियलकडे एखादा टॉपिक गेला, एखादा कंप्लेंट गेली की त्याच्यावरचा डिसिजन हा मॅक्झिमम 45 डेजमध्ये व्हायला पाहिजे. असे कायदे अनेक राज्यांमध्ये केलेले आहेत. गव्हर्नमेंट अधिकाऱ्यांना त्यांचे ड्युटी सक्षमतेने इफिशियंटली करायला लागावी म्हणून जे आवश्यक आहे तसे कायदे अनेक राज्यांमध्ये आहेत आणि मध्य प्रदेशमध्ये आहे. मला वाटतं बिहारमध्ये 2010 साली नितीश कुमार यांनी तो कायदा केला. त्याच्यानंतर आता महाराष्ट्र सरकार हा कायदा नव्याने आणू इच्छित आहे. खरं म्हणजे एकदा असा कायदा 2006 साली आपण केला आणि तो कायदाच, ज्या कायद्यात असं लिहिलंय की कोणत्याही प्रकरणी डिसिजन हा मॅक्झिमम 45 डेजमध्ये झाला पाहिजे, तो कायदाच 9 वर्ष पासना त्यांनी बांधून ठेवलेला आहे. तर त्या कायद्याचं आता पुढे काय करायचं आणि त्या कायद्याचं आता पुढे काय करायचं आणि तो कायदा म्हणजे एक्झॅक्टली काय याची चर्चा करायला आपण इथे जमलेलो आहोत. एव्हरीबडी इज फ्री टू आस्क दी क्वेश्चन. आणि मला वाटतं मी आता माईक हँड ओव्हर द माईक टू
as soon as the mic decides to come on. Yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, we don't really intend this to be a press conference, something in which the learned sit on the dais as we are. We're not particularly learned. To enlighten those in front of you, we're expecting all of you to join in because this is really a press panel discussion. As you've heard, it's about the Right to Services Act. Some of you have received an invitation that talks about it's ushering in a new era in governance. And it truly is that. Today we're going into 2 pieces of legislation in that direction. Now, it's very kind of the press club to give us this platform. And Gurbir, if you would like to say something, otherwise we'll go to Shailesh and do. Yes.
I think just very quickly, I think we should do it staccato style. If either Sanjay or somebody can just define the principal head points about what the new bill is about and where we are seeking changes very quickly, and then we can take it from that point and others can come in.
So Sanjay Ubale, who until recently was a secretary in the Chief Minister's office and now is managing director of TATA Realty and Infrastructure Limited. I hope I got that right.
Thanks a lot. I'll just very quickly make the introduction of the. So between me and Shailesh, we'll share the mic, so to speak, about the two legislations. One part of legislation I'll talk about, and Shailesh will talk about on the second part. But let me just give you a little bit of a backdrop of why this act is so important. Why was it really considered to be so important as to have a program of this kind to tell people? There are very few acts. Most of the time when the government actually creates a legislation, that legislation essentially is to discipline people. So the government says, if you don't do this, this is what the government will do. We'll send you to jail, we'll arrest you, whatever. Most of the time when the legislation actually happens, it is to discipline the citizens. But there have been only probably two legislations, which actually have empowered the citizens to get something from the government. So it's actually, these are the two acts. One was the Right to Information Act, which empowered the citizens to get something from the government. And the second one was Right to Services, which actually empowered the citizens. It is not fully empowered, and that's the reason why we're here. It empowers the citizens to get services from the government. So therefore, the legislation, there are legislations and legislations. Some legislation, as I said, actually try to discipline the citizens. Here, this is a legislation that tries to discipline the government. That's the reason why the citizens have to be very jealous about guarding these acts. Very important. The second thing I just want to, for not too many of you probably know, one of the proponents, one person who actually was a big activist on right to information was Arvind Kejriwal. I don't know if you know that he actually got the Legacy Award for right to information. Now, how powerful that act became is the outcome that you can see yesterday, that outcome that happened. I'm not necessarily saying it's only because of right to information, but the content of the act, the kind of power that the act has, a lot of governments have actually got exposed, a lot of governments failed because the power that was given in the hands of the citizens to expose scams and things like that. So Right to Information Act became an extremely powerful tool in the hands of the people. What unfortunately the Right to Information Act does, it only allows you information. It only allows you information, but it doesn't allow you any action. Okay, so just understand this. Right to information only allows you information. आपल्याला माहिती मिळवण्याचा अधिकार आहे, पण त्या माहितीवरती कारवाई करण्याचा अधिकार माहितीच्या कायद्यामध्ये नाही. What this Right to Services Act does is that actually takes you to the next level and says that now we will guarantee you not only information but also action. And that's the reason why it's extremely important. As you mentioned, the first piece of legislation happened in the year 2005. There are not too many people know about it. बऱ्याचशा लोकांनी त्याचा फायदा घेतला नाही. मला असं वाटतं की शासनाने देखील त्याचा काही फायदा घेतला नाही. फक्त बदलीच्या संदर्भामध्ये जेव्हा whenever there were transfers, people went against the government to get the transfers cancelled. That is the extent to which the act became applicable. So the old act had primarily three things. One was, if there are arbitrary transfers of the government officials, and some of us probably know that this was being used by some of the governments to extract whatever, rents or whatever, in arbitrarily transferring or at least making them compliant. So this act protected bureaucrats, civil servants from arbitrary transfers. That was one part of the act. The second one is there's a black hole called Mantralaya, and I was also part of that black hole once upon a time, where if you make an application, nothing comes out. So it just sucks everything in, but nothing comes out, right? So what this actually said, that if you make an application or if you make a request, that request has to be acted upon by a particular time. So all the file movements, the outcomes, decisions on the file has to happen within a certain time. 45 days was the time limit given to that. Not too many people are aware of that. I know of a lot of people where their cases have been pending for several years. I know of a friend, a doctor friend of mine, he finally got a decision after 17 years of struggling. 17 years of struggling, he got that decision. So for everybody's life, it is very, very important that we get quick actions from them. And the third one was about the services that various agencies of the government provide. For example, getting a ration card is a typical example. If you make an application for ration card, you should be able to get ration card within a stipulated time. Now, whether that happens or not, some of our experiences that it never happens. But this act actually puts upon the government the responsibility to see that you are able to get these services within the stipulated time. So these were the fundamental three things that happened. Unfortunately, the citizens' charters that were supposed to have been formed didn't happen. And nobody really, because nobody knew about it, therefore people did not demand those services. The purpose of today's meeting, आज जी प्रमुख कारण क्या है कि to tell, and through you maybe, and that's the reason why Prakash and Gurbir, we are really thankful to you. Actually, we want to really use the press and the media as a platform to reach out to the people saying that this is something that's available. You need to jealously guard this piece of legislation to empower yourself. And which is the reason why this kind of a partnership was created, to see that we are able to reach out to the people. So that's the fundamental purpose. The old act was basically for transfers, movement of files, and ensuring that certain citizen services are made available. That act has still not been implemented, and there's a new piece of legislation that has come out. I'm going to request Shailesh to speak very briefly about the new legislation.
Thank you. The old legislation that Sanjay was talking about, आणि प्रकाश म्हणाले की सर्वांना माहित आहे की सरकारकडनं कसे जवाब भेटते. त्रास हे आहे की काही जवाब भेटत नाही. The Transfers and Duties Act of 2006 guarantees an answer. That's all it does. It does not guarantee definitely a service, but it says there will be a citizens' charter which must be made by every government department and displayed and renewed every year. That was the promise. This has become actually a confidential act. Government servants don't seem to know about it, citizens don't seem to know about it. So our attempt is to popularize that, and that was what Lok Adhikar was formed all about. Now we are told there is a new service bill coming up, right to services. Granted, the Transfers and Delays Act would only guarantee an answer to a complaint, application, representation. You should get an answer within 45 days, and if you don't, you should tell the secretary of that department that this has not happened. The law requires an investigation to be carried out, and if necessary, a disciplinary action to be taken, all of which is purely on paper. Let me give you just one simple example of this. Sanction for prosecution is applied for by the Anti-Corruption Bureau. There is a Supreme Court judgment that says that it must be done within 90 days. They may sanction or refuse to sanction. I just saw the Anti-Corruption Bureau's website today. As of today, there are 167 cases of sanction for prosecution waiting for over 90 days, which is violative of this act, violative of the Supreme Court judgment, and yet nobody bothers about it, nobody cares. Idea is, can we all start putting pressure to get this implemented? In the meantime, they've come up with this new draft bill, very well intentioned. One can see that the intentions are very good to guarantee services, and if the services are not given, officers should be penalized. That's the basic concept of this.
I mean, if I can just butt in, just for clarity's sake, I mean, make it a kind of a discussion. Why was the old act, I mean, the RTI, for instance, became so useful as a tool to every common citizen that, you know, whether like it or not, the government was inundated with questions and queries, as you most well know. But why this other one, the Transfer Act? Why did it never become popular? I mean, what is the endemic problem with it?
Two reasons. A, it was not born out of a citizens' movement. This was the result of Anna fasting at Azad Maidan in 2003, so they brought it as an ordinance. And citizens also did not notice it, most of us didn't bother about it. So it's been an act that has not been used, and some people, including me and others who have tried to use it, find that there is no response. I mean, Chief Secretary treats it like absolute scrap of paper. We need to build a citizens' movement around that now.
Carry on. I mean, you wanted to explain the provisions of the new act.
Of the new bill.
Does it have better teeth? I mean...
No, this is to guarantee services. There is a difference. The earlier act guaranteed an answer or a decision. The Transfers and Delays Act. This bill seeks to guarantee a service as specified. However, it suffers from so many infirmities that as designed, it is not going to serve anything. It is worse than the Transfers and Delays Act. The Transfers and Delays Act at least has some key provisions which would empower citizens. This bill, as put up on the website, is completely toothless. In fact, I would say it will be putting up a lovely picture which you will see in the future, and that future will come perhaps after this government is no longer in place. So the provisions are so weak. It talks of penalties, but no amount of penalty. It talks of a very, very convoluted system for getting redressal, which I don't think will happen, having had experience. Nothing will happen out of this. It doesn't even promise after the bill is passed when this will become an act or when it will be notified. All of it is left deliciously vague, and I can see that it will take years first to get good provisions in this bill and then to get it implemented. But we have an opportunity.
Are you making the point that the second bill, the bill that is pending now, is like a torpedo below the waterline in the first act, so that in the end neither will function?
This one, as it is, will not function. The first one, I believe a law is what is written, and it's our fault as citizens that we've not taken to it. I don't blame the government. Some of us have made efforts, but if we build in thousands, my proposition is, let us get 1,000 cases where this law is violated. We will confront the government and say, please tell us how you are not implementing a law. This is a law. No government cannot implement a law, but we need to build some numbers for that.
In other words, this is a law that is there and it's there for us to use. The only problem is that not enough use has been made of it. It's as it were a collusion between the citizens and the government. Government has not been particularly keen on pushing it.
Yeah, I think that's the answer to your question. You said why this act did not meet the kind of same response as the Right to Information Act. See, fundamentally you need to understand that, you know, the responsibility of this was on the government. Now supposing if I'm going to be accountable to answering to the citizens, I'm not going to be interested in propagating the act. What happened in the Right to Information Act, there was a bunch of activists. In fact, Shailesh also is here. He's also been one of the very keen activists in Right to Information. They are the ones who actually held that movement together. I know that your Ashok Rawat is here. They have been the activists who actually held the act together. They forced the governments to act on it. However, in the Right to Services, there's not been an activist movement or the citizens movement to protect this act. And that has been the difference between the two. What the attempt here is, and what we are starting today, is to actually create that movement to see that we are able to create a similar kind of movement as we had in the Right to Information.
Also the structure and the institution which will back it, because again, to go back to RTI, Shailesh, is basically the question is specific and the reply is specific. It's a very, very pointed kind of interchange that you have with government. Now, where you're concerned with services, it becomes a little grey area in the sense that, well, you can be more specific, but yes, whether a particular order has been passed within that period of time or not, but it could be more general also. So, how do you think that you will institutionalize the implementation of a law like that?
The earlier act, Transfers and Delays Act, which is already in place, only says that within 45 days, and if another department is to be consulted within 90 days, a decision has to be given. Period. In fact, compared to RTI, this is a far less complex act. The act is extremely simple, but government officers are unwilling to use this, and since citizens haven't put pressure, it slaps by the wayside.
I'm talking of the new draft legislation.
No, I'm talking of the old act.
I'm saying that services.
The new bill, in fact, is still more specific. It will say, let me give an example. It will say, if you apply for a water connection, you should get your water connection in 15 days. Or they have to give you reasons why they can't give you the water connection in 15 days. So it's a right to get that service. In that sense, philosophically, it's a very good tool. Question is, the way they have drafted it now, it will become completely worthless. That's really the problem.
So could you give a few examples on how they've reneged on actual implementation by these kind of
in the bill,
escape valves they must have created? I am sure.
It's not escape valves, they're escape gates completely. Just to give you an example, when will this bill get notified after it is passed? Not stated. So it could take years for them. When will they give the rules for this? Not stated. They talk in terms of saying there will be penalties. How much? Not stated. Then they say that we'll have a mechanism. What services will be guaranteed also the bill doesn't say. It says in future we shall notify. As one of my friends Nangia said, this seems to be a bill of notifications. For everything that they have to do, they promise everything. Actually nothing happens. We'll notify, then we'll let you know. So it seems very clearly designed to ensure. And also there are two appeals in this, just like the RTA Act. RTA Act has 30 days for the first appellate authority. This Act talks of 90 days. The second appellate authority also another 90 days. So a service which you should have got in 15 days, resolution will take you nearly 200 days, 6 months or 8 months, which then becomes completely useless.
Yes, Nangya.
Alex, I want to share something about this delay and transfers and delays that have been making use of this act. Surprisingly, when I was not getting any response, we were not getting the desired result, I have taken up the matter to Mantralaya with various departments. It will be an utter surprise.
We're giving you a mic. We're giving you a mic.
It will be utter
No,
surprise.
just repeat what you said because lots of people have not heard you.
Okay. This Transfers and Delays Act, which was notified in 2006, have been making use of this act for the last 3-4 years, partly successfully and partly without any result. It will be a surprise for this House to know that when I took up the matter with the Mantralaya, various departments, the response was, this act is not applicable to public sector bodies. In fact, this decision was given by the Law and Judicial Department, and they say it's only the Mantralaya and the government departments which can be held accountable under this act. And all other agencies like MADA, MMRDA, BMC, they cannot be held accountable, their officials cannot be held accountable under the provisions of this act. And this decision came after 1 year, after the matter had been examined by Law and Judiciary Department. I've shared a copy of this, opinion from the Law and Judiciary Department, which said that means this practically. The other day when Chief Minister was there at one meeting where he addressed on good governance, he said this was only an administrative act and not for use by the citizen. So there is entire confusion at the government level. This act has not been of any use to us. And if we pursue after the Law and Judiciary Department have given a verdict that this act is not applicable to departments other than the Mantralaya departments. They say public sector bodies which deliver most of the services.
We can just a little more clarification
Yes,
for the House. In the sense, Lok Adhikar has obviously engaged the government on this. You'll have spoken to at the bureaucratic level as well as at the political level. What exactly is the sense you're getting in your discussions? Because your introductory thing was that the Chief Minister is and unfortunately he couldn't come. He last minute backed out. But what's the sense you all are getting about the government response? Even Prakash can respond. I mean, as a political editor, what is the sense you are getting from government?
That is one very important thing. What is the response that we are getting from government? But what are the two instruments that lie in the hands of citizens? After all, this is meant to draw you all in and to get you behind the two pieces of legislation. So both things.
I think we have had discussions with the government officials. Clearly, the Chief Minister has thrown his weight behind, as Prakash right at the beginning said, that he would like to ensure that the Right to Services Act becomes a reality and helps the citizens. So that's from the Chief Minister's perspective. We believe that there's a genuine desire to make this act happen. However, there are apprehensions at the official level, and when we discuss with them, officials are very clearly apprehensive. They feel that you guys are trying to harass us and trying to penalize us in some way or the other. That's a feeling that they have. Because if you don't deliver, then there'll be a penalty that will be attached to it. So that's one. Second thought that they have is, look, we can't even do our ordinary job. But now you're asking us to do a job within a certain time. It has never happened in the government. Now you're suddenly going to hold us accountable for efficiency. And the government was never known for efficiency. So it's unless we have very strong systems, IT platform to deliver that, we are just unnecessarily inviting something on ourselves which we will not be able to deliver. That's the second important thing that they have. So what we are planning to do is, and we understand some of those issues because we are still functioning in a relatively more an archaic system. we are actually going to talk to them. We have invited them to have a talk. The intention is not to harass the government officials. We believe that citizens and government actually coexist in a absolutely. Yes.
I don't think they'll allow him to get this thing,
Maybe you should answer that.
My gut feel is that no bureaucrat will advise the chief minister, even if he is emotionally for the act, to go through with it. I think they would delay it as long as possible.
नाही मला असं वाटतं की पॉलिटिकल लिडरशिप जी असते त्यांना एकाच वेळेला ब्युरोक्रेसी आणि एकाच वेळेला आम आदमी दोघांनाही खुश करायचं असतं. या प्रॉब्लेम मध्ये ते सापडले आहेत का?
नाही, तुम्ही थोडी वेळ अगोदर म्हणाले की ब्युरोक्रॅट्सला पॉलिटिशियन्स हैरान करतात. सो दिस कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ हे ह्याला हैरान करतो, आय थिंक अँड yesterday I shown this to us. Citizens' power is really supreme. We don't even need to make a political party. We don't even need to go to elections. Are we willing to exercise that? And let's understand, I think the politicians also realize that citizens' power is a very powerful tool. Sanjay, of course, having been a past bureaucrat, partly says it is difficult. My own perception is good governance is a right, and without good governance, we'll never get anywhere. If you talk of corruption as an independent thing, it will never go, because government is not designed to deliver. These are laws that are designed to deliver. Governments themselves have made these laws. So it is not as if it can't be done. It needs some effort. But I think we should confront. You are right. I do believe in engagement and discussion. But if that doesn't work, confrontation is the way. And I suspect we need to put pressure. I mean, you can call it confrontation, call it engagement, call it discussion, what you will.
I just wanted to also add something which is a secret, which not too many people know outside. And I'm going to Mr. Bogirwar also is here. He used to be the former chief secretary. And I don't know whether you will agree with me, but this has been my experience at least. Most of you, those who are not in the government, think that in the government, you can do everything. You can get all the permissions without... Let me tell you the secret. If I am the municipal commissioner, for example, whether I can guarantee that I will, for my own building, get the building permission is something that you cannot guarantee. I can tell you this as a secret which not too many people know.